Now, last year, just 196 Australian children were adopted, despite nearly 40,000 Australian children living separately from their birth families for 2 or more years. It's the lowest number of adoptions on record and is 5% less than the previous year.
Well, research has revealed that there are many barriers preventing vulnerable, at-risk children from finding permanent homes. To tell us more, we're joined by Renee Carter, Chief Executive of Adopt Change. Welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you.
So why is it so difficult to adopt in Australia?
Look, it's a good question. There's a lot of people that are wanting to adopt and offer children a permanent home, but it seems that the most overwhelming barrier is that people are finding it a very complex process, hard to find out where to start, and are being caught up in the process partway through. So there's a range of barriers that they face.
Who are the families wanting to go through that process? Are we seeing a range of people who are involved in this, even foster families, for instance, who might be wanting to go down that path?
Yes, absolutely. We found that a range of different people approached us for our research, and 70% of those were married, but we had a range of single people as well looking to adopt, and I think about 35% of them already had a child in their care through foster care that wanted to adopt those children that had lived with them for many years.
So Renee, presumably these barriers have been put in place from government regulations, making it tougher because they're increasing the vetting process, trying to make sure that children who are placed and are adopted are in suitable homes. But in your view, is it a little excessive as to the hoops that people have to jump through?
Look, absolutely, there has to be great due diligence, and it needs to be done in an ethical way to make sure that children are placed in safe, secure homes and have the best possible outcome. By way of contrast, though, often children are instead bouncing through the out-of-home care system, moving 10 times, 20 times from home to home, sometimes staying in a hotel with a caseworker. So we're not contrasting different types of permanent homes. We're actually looking at condemning a child to a life in limbo.
When we look at the overall issue and compare Australia, in fact, with other countries around the world, do you feel that perhaps there's a reluctance in general around the issue of adopting, given previous government policies? I'm thinking in terms of Indigenous children who were taken forcibly. I'm thinking also of single mothers who were pressured in previous generations. Is that part of what is perhaps driving the strictness around those rules?
Yes, look, I think that there are attitudes towards adoption in Australia, rightly so, due to past practices. So they were completely unacceptable, and there's still a ricochet effect of those practices now with people that have been hurt by that. What we need to do is make sure that adoption that we practice now is completely ethical. It's open, so we retain birth family links, and recognise, though, that we do need to have a solution for children who aren't able to live at home. So the child needs to be put first in that situation.
Let's just take a look at some of the examples of those barriers that have been put in place. One striking example are prospective parents wanting to adopt and their body mass index is a problem. Essentially, they're deemed as being too overweight. What's the problem?
Yes, look, I guess there's a range of criteria there, and we had people approaching us explaining that body mass index had ruled them out, that they were overweight or deemed overweight by that measure. But that included people that were regular gym goers or triathlon runners, and so it was more to do with their muscle mass than being overweight. But so if that criteria is used as an absolute measure, it's not effective.
But so essentially what the authorities are saying is that the child would be introduced into an unhealthy household.
Either that, and I guess also you do want to make sure that the parents will be around for a long time and are healthy enough to look after the child. But really, we need to look at criteria as a whole, and really just making sure that these are safe, suitable families that are able to cater to the child's needs.
When we talk about the child being at the centre, obviously, of how we approach this issue, do we also have an understanding of how children are feeling about being in this situation where we're seeing some 40,000 children in out-of-home care for some 2 years or more? Is there a desire among children, particularly those who've been placed perhaps with a foster family,
Yes,
to see this process happen?
Yes, look, we're absolutely, and these are not all babies, these are teenagers as well. So we know of one case where a child came into foster care pre-teens and is now late teens, almost about to age out of the system. But for that child, she really wants to be adopted by her foster family, and yet those voices aren't heard. So we are hearing through the research that there's a large number of those children that do want adoption for the security and permanency. And so we do need to find a way to hear what they're asking for and recognise their right to permanency.
So you're advocating, I mean, you set up the group Adopt Change. The very name suggests you want to see change.
We do.
What are you lobbying the government for?
Really the government has committed to making permanency a priority, so we want to see them stick to that and make sure that that's a reality really for children, so that it's not just that we're changing legislation, but that actually all of the non-government organisations are all involved as well in making sure that it is accessible for children.
And when we're looking at this situation as well, what support is there for people to go through this process? I'm thinking both, obviously, the parents who are seeking to go through this process, but also for the children. What sort of supports are there? Do we have enough of that as well?
I don't think we have enough pre and post adoptive supports. That's also something that we advocate for. We need to make sure that information is communicated really well. We have people sometimes going through the adoption process that takes 10 years. So we really need to make sure we communicate, that we, I guess in terms of support for the children, rather than them having them being bounced around the system, actually listening to them, hearing what they need, having them have security in the placement that they're in.
And once again, just could you make that distinction between a foster family and a family that adopts?
Yes.
Obviously, some foster families are not in a position to adopt then.
Yes, so it varies from state to state. I guess one of the barriers is financial, and recently New South Wales has changed their process so that you can still be financially supported if you adopt. So sometimes children coming into care have got high trauma needs, high medical needs, and there's families that aren't in a position to adopt because they would lose that support.
Okay.
Now they will receive that still.
And are we seeing a considerable number of people who are wanting to go through this process? Is that something that we're also seeing in the community as well, that this is an ongoing desire for people to pursue?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we surveyed over 1,000 people nationally, and they were all looking at either adopting or had adopted. That's, I guess, a small portion, but from those people we were definitely seeing the right reasons for wanting to adopt too, which was to provide children with permanency.
Renee Carter from Adopt Change. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.